Okay, in this video we're going to be covering pre-algebra fractions, decimals, and percents. Sometimes it's important to talk about fractions, it's important to talk about decimals, and it's important to talk about percents in different situations. So we'll just go through the instructions, and as it asks us, to convert from one to another, we'll do so, but keep in mind that sometimes it's more important to talk in different terms, whether it is fractions, decimals, or percents. The most important part is knowing how to convert it, and then the second part I would say is when you're using it or when to use it. So let's start with number one. It's asking us to convert each as a decimal and then round to the thousandths place. So let's start with number one, 90%. So what we want to do is just write that 90 by itself and keep in mind where the decimal is. If it doesn't show a decimal, it's always at the far right side. So what the percent sign does is actually moves the decimal to the left 2 places, and the reason it does that is because a percent means out of 100. So 90 out of 100. And so what we want to do is convert, the percent, if you want, you can convert it, 90 over 100. So you're just writing the number value over 100 and removing that percent sign. And so what we can do is, while it's in this fraction form, cancel those zeros out, or they factor themselves out, we end up with 9/10. 9/10 is a decimal, I'll just tell you, is 0.9. So we should get that when we do this form right here. Okay, so we're going to move the decimal over 1, 2, and what our new number is 0.9, and that's one method of converting a percent into a decimal. You can also do it the fraction way, like I did on the right side of the problem, and convert it into a decimal that way. So let's jump on number 2, 30%. So we're going to go right to 30, the decimal's here, and move that over 1, 2, and we end up with 0.3. Number 3, 115.9, move the decimal over 1, 2, we end up getting 1.159. Number 4, 9%. So keep in mind the decimal again is there. We always have to move it to the left 2 decimal places. So it becomes 1 and 2. So our new decimal is right here, but we can't just leave this area right here opened. So what we have to do is put a 0 there to fill in the space, and we end up with 0.09. Okay, number 5, 7%. So go and write that 7, our decimal is right there, move that over 1, 2, we end up getting 0.07. Number 6, 65%. So we have our decimal here, move it over 1, 2, we end up with 0.65. Number 7, 0.3, move the decimal over 1, 2, we end up getting 0.03. Number 8, 445%, our decimal is right here, move that over 1, 2, we end up getting 4.45. Okay, number 9. What we're going to be doing in this section is writing each as a percent, round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So we're converting these decimals into percents now. So instead of going like we did in the previous section from percents to decimals, now going decimals to percents. So let's start with number 9. So same thing, but in reverse. On the first one, when we wanted to convert from a percent to a decimal, we moved the decimal place over to the left 2 times. Now we want to convert it from decimal to fraction, so we're going to move the decimal from the left to the right 2 times. So let's start with our number 0.452. We move that decimal over 1, 2. We end up getting 45.2, and you have to add that percent. Number 10, 0.006, move the decimal over 1, 2, we end up getting 0.6%. Okay, number 11, 0.002, move the decimal over 1, 2, 0.2%. Number 12, we have 0.05, move the decimal over, 1, 2, we end up getting 5%. Number 13, 4.78, move the decimal over, 1, 2%, we end up getting 478%. Okay, number 14, 0.1, move the decimal over, 1, 2, filled that with a 0, we end up getting 10%. Okay, number 15, 3.63, move the decimal over, 1, 2, we end up getting 363%. All right, final one, number 16, 0.003, move the decimal, 1, 2, we end up getting 0.3%. Okay, number 17. Now they want us to write these percents into fraction form. So like I said in the beginning, percents means, or percent sign means out of 100. So for number 17, you could read this 25 out of 100 or 25%. So what we want to do is write these as fraction. So like I said, it's out of 100. So we can say 25 out of 100 and then reduce it from there. So our common factor is 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 goes into 100 20 times. We can reduce by 5 again. 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 24 times. We end up with 1/4. Number 18. 70 out of 100. These zeros can cancel, and we end up getting 7/10. Number 93. 93 out of 100. Those can't reduce, so that's our answer for number 19. Number 20, 58%, 58 over 100. We can reduce by 2. We end up getting 29 out of 50, and that won't reduce anymore, so number 20 is 29 over 50. Okay, number 21, 50 over 100. The zeros cancel. We end up getting 5 out of 10, and that can reduce again to 1 over 2. So number 21 is 1/2. Number 22. Okay, so what we want to do on this one is, I think it was in the last video, decimals and fractions, where we covered how to convert repeating decimals into fractions. Same concept as in that video as in this situation right here. What we want to do is set a variable to 66.6 repeated percent and then start subtracting from both sides by a value of x. So let me explain how we're going to do that. What we want to start out with is x equals 66.6 repeated percent. Okay, this is the same as 0.66 repeated on and on and on forever. All we did was convert the percent into a decimal. It still repeats, we just moved the decimal place. So what we want to do now is define 10x. So 10x equals, what do? We just move this decimal over one place, right? So we end up getting 6.6 repeated. Nothing changed, we just multiplied by a factor of 10. And the reason we do this is where the trick comes in. What we want to do now is subtract x from both sides. And what do we get on the left side? 10x minus x is just 9x equals 6.6 repeated minus x. Well, what's x? X again is 0.6 repeated. So we're taking 6.6 repeated minus 0.6 repeated. We're just left with 6. Okay, we can divide both sides by 9. These cancel. We end up getting x equals 6/9, and when we reduce that by a factor of 3, we get 2 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So for number 22, we end up getting 2/3. Okay, number 20. So we're going to have that 20, and then we put it over 100. These zeros cancel. We end up with 2/10. It's going to write 2/10. Common factor is 2. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So we end up with 1/5. Number 24. I'm going to do this in a different color just to overlay what we did in number 22. And I'll try and do it small so we don't have to erase anything. But number 24, we have 80%, 80 over 100. Those zeros can't reduce or cancel. Our common factor between 8 and 10 is 2. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So 80% is equal to 4/5. Okay. Number 25. 71%, 71 over 100 equals 71 over 100. Number 26. 30%, 30 over 100. Those zeros reduce or cancel. We end up getting 3/10. Okay, number 27. What we're going to be doing in this is converting these fractions into percents and use repeating decimals when necessary. So for number 27, I'm going to do one method, and then for 28, I'm going to do a different method. And each one works in different situations. If you keep in mind that percent, or when you have that percent sign, it means out of 100, what you can do is, for example, if I had 8 over 100, that would equal 8%, okay? Because 8%, it means 8 out of 100, and when we write it as a fraction, 8 over 100, that means 8 out of 100. So keep that in mind when we do 27, and it wouldn't work for 28, and I'll explain why as we do it. So 27, if we change the denominator from 2 to 100, what we're doing is multiplying by 50. Okay, so if we multiply the bottom by 50, we have to multiply the top by 50. And what we get on top is 50, and our fraction now becomes 50 over 100. So 1/2 equals 50 over 100, and again, percent means out of 100, so you can write 50 over 100 as 50%. Now this method wouldn't work for number 28 because there's not an easy number that you can multiply 8 by to get 100. So this method wouldn't be efficient in number 28. So what we can do is a different method in 28 where we are essentially doing division. So we have the 8 on the outside and then a 1 on the inside. Bring the decimal up, add a 0. 0 goes in, 8 goes into 1 0 times, 8 goes into 10 once. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract those, we get a 2. Bring down another 0. 8 goes into 20 2 times. We end up getting 16. Subtract those, we get 4. Bring down another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. We subtract those, we get 0. So we end up getting 1/8 equals 0.125. Same thing we wanted to do before where we convert a decimal into a percent. We move this decimal over 1, 2, and we end up getting 12.5%. Okay, number 29. 2/3 into a percent. So same thing as we did on the last problem where it's difficult to write, multiply the 3 by some factor to get 100 in the denominator. We're going to do a division, the division method. So we have 3 on the outside, 2 on the inside. 3 goes in, and bring the decimal up. 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 goes into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract those, we get a 2. Bring down the next value, which is 0. 3 goes into 26 times. So you can see that this is going to continue to repeat. So what we want to do is we can put a bar up top. Same thing we did on the last one where we move the decimal over 1 2 places. In this case, we end up getting 66.6 repeated percent. Okay, number 30. So again, because percent means out of 100, we have 1 out of 100 as a fraction. This is the same as just 1%. That was easy. number 31. This one, there's two different ways we can solve this out. We can do the 1/10 portion, convert that as a decimal, and then convert that to a percent, and then add that onto the 2, or we can do the whole thing at one time. I'm going to do both ways. So let's start with just dealing with that 1/10. So we'll leave the 2 on the outside and deal with this 1/10. So we end up getting 1/10. Again, because it's out of 100, we can multiply the top and bottom by a factor of 10 to get 100 on the bottom. If we multiply the bottom by 10, we have to multiply the top by 10. So we end up getting 10 here. 10 out of 100 is equal to 10%. And then we can just add that onto the 2. Now the 2, because it's written like this with the decimal at the right, we got to convert that to a percent also. So we have to move this decimal over 1, 2. So we end up getting 200%. Add that to the 10% we had up here, and we end up getting 210%. Okay. That's one method. Let me do a different method. Let me do a different method down below. So let's do 31 is written as 2 1/10. Okay, so we can multiply this into a single fraction where we have 2 times 10 is 20 plus 1 is 21 over 10. And again, because we have it in the form where we can easily multiply the top and bottom by a factor to get the denominator as 100, we can just multiply bottom by 10 to get 100 here, multiply top by 10 to get 210 up top. Again, because it's percent means out of 100, we have 210%, which is the same as what we got when we did it the other method. Okay, number 32. So again, because we can't multiply the denominator by an even or an easy factor to get it to 100, we'll just do the division method. So we have 8 on the outside, 3 on the inside, add a decimal, add a 0. 8 goes into 3 0 times, bring the decimal up. 8 goes into 33 times. 3 times 8 is 24. Subtract those, we get 6. Bring a 0 down. 7 goes into, 8 goes into 67 times. Subtract those, we get 56. 4, bring down a 0. 8 goes into 45 times. 5 times 8 is 40. We end up getting a 0 when we subtract those. So we end up getting 0.375 is equal to 3/8. To convert that into a percent, we move the decimal over 1, 2, and we get 37.5%. Okay, number 33, 1/10. Again, because we can multiply, the top and bottom by a factor of 10 to get 100 on the bottom, makes it easier. 1 times 10 is 10, so we end up getting 1/10 equals 10%. Number 34, 87 out of 100. Because 87 is over 100 already, we know right away that is 87%. And this is converting fractions, decimals, and percents.